I'm very excited about this. Dr. Sandy Wilkins, and Dr. Wilkins is with Virginia Commonwealth University in Doha, Qatar. Now, as I've talked about you many times, in Qatar, they have basically University City where they have 7 colleges there that anybody can attend, and you can go from one college to the other. And Dr. Williams is with Virginia Commonwealth University, home of the Rams, in Doha. Dr. Wilkins, great to have you with us.
Thank you, John.
You know, I want to talk a little bit about your background. As a young American woman, what got you interested in the history of Middle Eastern fashion? Because what you teach at Virginia Commonwealth, all the colleges that are there, there's 7 of them, have a specific area of expertise, and art and fashion being one for Virginia Commonwealth. What got you interested in the history of Middle Eastern fashion?
Well, you know, it's funny. The trend towards modesty certainly was one, but when I actually moved there 20 years ago, that certainly wasn't, you know, a primary focus. But I think fashion internationally, I mean, as we look for inspiration, because fashion is something that changes constantly. So, you know, looking at the Middle East was certainly probably the next step. The other thing is the fact that Middle Easterners, particularly those that live in the Gulf region, are huge consumers of fashion. And so I thought it was really important to look at what it is that they were wearing and certainly to anticipate what it is they'd be buying.
We're with Dr. Sandra Wilkins. She's an associate professor, chair of the Department of Fashion at the Virginia Commonwealth University in Qatar in Doha, part of a 7-college university system in Doha, and VCU, one of the first ones in. And if you've never been there, I was there, Sandy, when I visited Doha, when I visited the Middle East, and I went to Doha in March. And going into that university complex, it was fascinating to me to see so many colleges and the fact that anybody can come, and it's not like you have to attend Virginia Commonwealth or Carnegie Mellon or one of the others there. You're actually able to take classes in different disciplines, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, we are all part of the Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani University complex. Mm-hmm. That is the overarching organization that we all participate in. And so, like every university in the world, students can take classes in various areas that certainly will enhance their degree pursuits. So, yes, I mean, it's an amazing opportunity for students to get a real taste of, you know, what is regional and certainly what is interdisciplinary.
I mean, I find it to be one of the fascinating things done in the world, especially in the state of Qatar, that so few people really understand or know about. And when this idea first came to be, nobody gave it a chance. The colleges that the emir's wife approached, basically, you blew her off. And now it's been such a rousing success in reality. I want to get back to your area of interest. What are some of the similarities between Middle Eastern and American fashions, if any?
Well, you know, we are a multicultural world these days. And so whether there are parallels between what women wear in the Middle East, certainly that's dictated by culture as well as religion. We find Middle Eastern women in the United States in great numbers these days. And so being able to provide, because when I left here 20 years ago to move to Doha, there was little or no Middle Eastern fashion available for women in this country. And I mean, they were, you know, produced in cottage industries and so forth. And now not only do we see it on an international basis, but we see the fashion houses also utilizing the influences of Middle Eastern fashion to create their collections. So, you know, whether there are similarities or not, we are, in the fashion industry, always there to provide what's in demand. And I think right now, not only Middle Eastern clothing, but modesty. I think modesty is probably the number one overarching theme in fashion these days. I mean, I think women, as they feel more empowered, don't necessarily want to flaunt themselves. They want to look feminine. They want to look respectable, for the lack of another term. And looking at the Middle East and their leadership in the area of fashion, I think is really important.
You know, Professor Wilkins, I find it fascinating. You're a long-term American, let's call you an expat. You've been living in Qatar for more than 2 decades. You're an American citizen. I mean, you obviously went there to visit. What is it that you got up one day and said, I'm just going to stay here? Like, how did that happen?
Well, you know, I think that's a great question and one that's very dear to me. I visited there, and I just fell in love with the people and the culture. They were warm and inviting, and that pursuit of education, because VCU was the first university on Education City. When we opened our doors, we were there primarily for women. It wasn't until 4 years later that we actually accepted men into our programs that were specifically designed. And the families, the students, I think they were so grateful and so inviting and so warm that, you know, like year by year, I'd make the decision. I'd say, okay, I'm going to stay another year, and then the next year turned into another year and another year, and then 20 years later, you know, I was still there. I will say to you that I actually retired this last June. At the end of the academic year was my last semester there. And so someone else is in the leadership position. I will always be connected to this program because I built this program. But right now, I'm stateside. But still, I maintain my ties with the university, as I always will.
Well, you know what's interesting, the recent changes in the state of Qatar regarding long-term residency laws. Like, for instance, what I found out when I was in the Middle East there in the Gulf is that Qatar is the only Gulf country to grant long-term expats permanent residency status and benefits. How does that work?
Well, I mean, you have to apply. I think it's their attempt to attract those that are at the top of their game in terms of technology and education and so forth. As they move towards, 2022, which is certainly, and I think to attract people, you have to open your borders. You can't make the process really, really difficult. But the Qataris have always been forward thinkers. They're always looking to build a better nation and to be participants in building a better world. So opening your borders to individuals who have something to offer that can enhance your culture and society, I think is really, really important. So it's simply a matter of making applications. I think as long as you don't have a criminal background and a criminal record and you bring something to the table, the Qatar government is open to having you in their country and participating in its success.
All right, so Professor Wilkins, you've been there 20 years. You retired after teaching for 2 decades, where you retired as chair of the Department of Fashion of Virginia Commonwealth University in Qatar. And then why'd you stay? Like, you would think, all right, I'm retired now. I'll just go back to the U.S., but you decided to stay there. Why?
Well, actually, I'm kind of dual. I mean, I'm here in the United States right now. I just arrived back from Doha 2 weeks ago because I love it. I mean, it's a wonderful place to be. There's a level of safety and security. I'm respected as a woman, as an American woman, despite the fact that I'm not Muslim. I do respect the culture. And in turn, the people, the residents, the nationals, they respect me. So it's a wonderful place to live. As I said, and the level of safety is pretty much unprecedented. I mean, when you compare what goes on, in other places around the world.
So as a Christian living in a predominantly Muslim country, did you face any discrimination, any bias, any times where you were kind of ostracized?
No, not at all. Not at all. Actually, I tell many of my friends that it is watching my Catholic family practice their religion made me, and I think there's so often, very negative things. We look at various religions, and I never experienced that in Qatar. I was able to practice my religion in Qatar.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really, really positive thing. As I said, there's so many misconceptions about the religion and about the Middle East. And I will say for Qatar, because I don't know about, other areas
right.
In the Middle East, but I know as far as Qatar, I think people, whatever religion they embraced, were allowed to do that.
What about the blockade that the Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, and Egypt put on Qatar last year when you were there? Did that affect the economy, your lifestyle, your ability to buy necessities?
Actually, it did not. I think the Qataris are extremely resourceful. And under the leadership of Sheikh Tamim, they didn't miss a beat. I mean, there were, in the first month or so, certain products that we were accustomed to having were in short supply. But it didn't take long for them to resolve those issues. I think it may turn out to be a very positive thing for Qatar. Sometimes when you're forced to tap into your own resources and to build and to look elsewhere for your day-to-day necessities and needs, actually can be a positive thing. And I think it's been a very positive thing for Qatar.
I agree with you. When I was there and I talked to just people on the street, in the market, or just walking down in the park, whatever. And that's the other thing. I mean, no one was concerned about talking to anybody. It was completely free. But a lot of the moms and dads that I talked to said that same thing. For the first month, it was a little inconvenient, but now it's better than ever. And I remember one person telling me the blockade has actually been the best thing because I've got better choices in the stores and I'm not paying as much for anything. So it's just like better choices, lower prices. That's a pretty good deal. Yeah, I hope it stays. So
absolutely.
I think it's kind of strange. Now, as an American educator, you're at one of the six Qatar-based American universities. Tell us about Education City and Virginia Commonwealth University, Qatar. Describe the changes that you've seen since you've been there for 20 years.
Well, I mean, it's probably the best educational environment that I've ever been in. I've been in education for over 40 years, primarily with VCU Richmond, before going to Qatar. The facilities are amazing. Small classrooms, meaning, 10 to 12, maybe 15 students to a class. That's unprecedented. I mean, you just don't hear about that, here in the United States. The students, I have to say, and I have to speak about them, they're very much like American students. They want the same things. They conduct themselves in very much the same way. So, anyone that's reluctant in education to move to Qatar to be a part of Education City would find that, it's pretty much the same. You don't miss a beat, other than the fact that the facilities are amazing. And they're constantly building to provide the best situation, and that is in terms of facilities for their students and for their families and so forth. Less than a year ago, the Qatar Library opened on Education City, which is an amazing facility. Mm-hmm. The Islamic Museum and the Knapcraft Museum, and then the Museum of Contemporary Art will open very soon. So it's just a wonderful place for education with amazing resources that certainly would enhance anyone's educational pursuit.
Well, as a Virginia Commonwealth University basketball Rams fan, it's always good to hear how well things are going there. And I know that VCU is really the first college to come in and make the commitment when this kind of vision was unveiled by the Amir's wife. I want to ask you this. Let's talk about Qatari women. How would you describe Qatari women in the Gulf and the Middle East in comparison to, say, other women in the Middle East or North Africa? Like, just explain the difference.
Well, that's an interesting question. Is there a significant difference? I don't know that there is. I mean, because of the gas and oil, they are, in many respects, privileged. I mean, there are certain advantages, certainly, to having, those kind of financial resources. One thing I would say about them, though, given the opportunity for education, they excel. Our young women, certainly the women at VCU, and I think this is something that most professors at the other universities would share, is that the women are very, very serious about their education. I think to participate in the running of their own country is really important to them. And because of that, they pursue education with a zeal and a zest that I've not witnessed recently. I mean, they're very, very serious, no matter what, level of participation. I think some of them who will be housewives maybe and not, part of the government or part of the, the workforce, will pass this on to their own daughters and so forth. So I think in that respect, Qatari women are extremely serious about education.
That is just fascinating to hear. Final question, and I was really excited about having you on just to get your perspective, Professor Wilkins. So you lived in Doha in Qatar for 20 years before you've come back stateside. Over that period of time, I mean, you told us about a lot of the good things. What were the 2 or 3 biggest challenges you faced when you first went there?
Driving.
Really?
I think driving and listen, I never want to speak, negatively about Qatar because it is my second home. But I do think one of the things that certainly could improve is the driving. The driving, the traffic, the road rules, and their, administering them and so forth probably is the most difficult thing that I faced the whole time I was there.
Like worse than Los Angeles?
Well, I don't know. No, I mean, certainly in terms of volume, there's certainly not the volume of traffic in Doha. But there's just so many people and so many, cars. And I think it also has a lot to do with, you have people from other parts of Asia, because if you've been to India, if you've been to Egypt, and places like that, the driving can be a real challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of, and so having those individuals as part of, the growth of Qatar, it does make driving in the country really, really challenging.
So
that would be my number one negative about the country.
Well, here's the good news. When you get back to the States and you're driving around the District of Columbia and people are banging the horn because you're 2.5 seconds behind a stop sign or something, now you can appreciate that. It's not so bad. It's not really that bad as it is there.
It's not that bad.
I know. We're out of time. I want to thank Professor Wilkins for being with us today, former associate professor and former chair of the Department of Fashion for Virginia Commonwealth University in Doha, Qatar. And we want to thank you, Sandy. Thank you for your time and for being with us today.
You're
Fascinating
so welcome,
dialogue.
It's my pleasure.